I'm Madelyn Blair, and this is Unlocked. Now, if you're a person who reaches for your goals that challenge you to fully reach for your potential, this show is for you. Because this is a show about opening possibilities so that when you're hit with the unexpected, you have options from which to choose. I want to thank you for joining me on this ride today. Our topic is lessons from a master's athlete. I grew up on a farm, and my main interest was the natural world around me. I roamed the fields and woods of our farm every chance I could get out of the house. When I went to school, I immersed myself in learning. Sports, the only thing I did was run, mostly in running errands for my mother. Oh, I rode a bicycle, but only so that I could do my errands faster. So while I have pursued a professional career for many years, it never occurred to me that sports would be a part of professional life, nor that the lessons of motivation and visioning and management and, of course, resilience could be learned through sport. About 7 years ago, I was studying with Bo Eason. Now, he's a former NFL player. I think he was a safety. Bo talked about sports with a passion that allowed me to see that there is much to be learned from athletes, especially those that commit themselves to be professionals. I decided that I had to find someone who was a professional athlete and still practicing it, because I was curious to understand the kinds of lessons that they learned and how they learned them. And today we'll be talking with someone who falls in this category. She is a world-class masters athlete who still competes in cycling events and coaches young people who aspire to do the same. In my initial discussion with her, she asked if I cycled. And I said, oh, well, I rode a bike when I was young, but I don't anymore. And while I do Pilates every week, I don't do any other exercise. It took her little more than 3 minutes to convince me that I should consider a standing bike and where I might go to learn about them. In fact, by the end of this time, she had given me the assignment to visit a specific store to do this research. Now, it is my intention always to do what I say I'll do, which means that I'm pretty careful about what I agree to do. So it was surprising for me to hear myself say, okay, I'll check it out. Now, if you're wondering, yes, I did do my homework. I went to the store to check out standing bikes, but that didn't answer all of my questions about cycling, standing or otherwise. We're going to take a short break so that you can think about what you're curious about and what you'd like to ask my guest if you were in my seat. So stay tuned. Well, Beth Leasure-Hudson, welcome to Unlocked.
Thank you, Madelyn.
and welcome back to all my listeners. You're listening to Unlocked, and I'm your host, Madelyn Blair. And as you have probably guessed, our guest today is Beth Leasure-Hudson, a national champion and world-class competitor. Wow. I'm just so excited about this conversation, Beth.
Thank you. I'm excited you took my advice.
Yes. Well, that's what coaches do.
Yeah, that's right. They boss people around.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about Beth, so you get a sense of why she could get me to do something in 3 minutes. She is an expert in performance for competitive road cycling. She's a world-class masters athlete herself. Beth manages performance for riders and teams. Her core business is developing world-class women from teen years as juniors to successful professional cyclists. And she's the founder and former executive director of Team Spirit, a nonprofit to support collegiate riders. She's also a former trade team cyclist, and she explained to me that this means that she had real sponsors for her work and efforts. And she's now an age group national champion and world-class competitor who knows what it takes to train her body, mind, and spirit and build the support necessary for top-level performances. I could go on and on and on because it's just amazing what she has done. But I think I'm going to let you hear from her because she's just an amazing and highly resilient individual. So again, welcome to Unlocked, Beth.
Thank you. I'm humbled to be here.
Oh, listen, I'm honored that you're here. Listen, I know that there is a story behind this incredible performance that I've just talked about. I wonder if you could just pursue something in terms of your athletic abilities and share something what drew you to serious cycling.
Love and suffering.
Now you're going to have to say more than that.
Yeah, I will. So I'm experiencing a radical shift in my mindset and my worldview through some of the things I'm reading and learning. And there's an author called Richard Rohr who's put a language to some of those shifts. And he says that it's really only through love and suffering that we do transform or that we change our path. And so I didn't come to athletics from a successful childhood sports experience. I came, in fact, my childhood sports experiences were rather frustrating, and I wasn't in an athletic family, and I didn't have guidance. And I think I know that to perform in sports, even at the high school level, there has to be a certain kind of support. Mm-hmm. So my journey to it was like everybody's journey to anything, full of fits and starts. So the way I came to it is as a young person, not terribly young, but at 25, I decided to marry, and it was kind of a spontaneous decision. And I didn't know the person real well. And the marriage was traumatic. It involved drug addiction and crime on his part. And it took me places that I had no experience or desire to be. And I was really traumatized. I was really kind of like a deer in headlights. Wow. And also I had pretty rigid religious formation in my family. And the idea of divorce and dealing with the kind of issues, real world issues that I was dealing with there was a lot of shame involved with it. So, but my parents, they were able to learn too, and they were able to expand their awareness and embrace the reality of what was going on and support me. But I was forced to go home because I was left in a bad way financially and of course emotionally, and then spiritually, trying to work out what does all this mean and why me, and all these questions, all the big questions, which again, love and suffering makes you ask those questions that are transformative, and makes you think beyond the duality, beyond good, evil, right, wrong. helps you to see that the reality is a lot of shades of gray, that there is a very generous universe with a lot of generosity in it. Really no place for shame, and no place for irrefutable mistakes. So in the meantime, trying to work all this out, I was advised to exercise for my mental health, just to get outside. And so being in not a great way financially, I started to ride a bike that was just in my parents' barn, and it was a tank of a bike. And I started to meet people, and then one day I saw some real riders, which I had never noticed before. I'm sure I've seen them, but I'd never noticed before, wearing Lycra, strange clothes, fancy bicycles, and something just sparked in me. And I attended a local ride, and I started to meet those people, and that became a very healing community for me. And they included me, and they gave me stuff. They got me on better bicycles. They included me in learning and skills development, and all the things that I needed. Healing for my heart was occurring through this community. And then at this point, prior to this, I had been a very well, what I thought was a fairly confident, invulnerable young person. And now I was full of doubt, unwilling to make decisions completely on my own. I just didn't trust my judgment after that marital choice. And so I really needed what I felt were like big signs of what my next choices were going to be. And I got them. I got big signs. I got just incredible doors opening early through provision. I got wise counsel who agreed that this is the direction I should go. And a lot of it happened because it turned out that out of gratitude for the help I was getting from the local club, they wanted me to do what was called a time trial. And that's a race against the clock. And I had no idea what that was, and I didn't really want to do it. My experience with competition in high school had been a little negative and not very supported. So I just wasn't excited about the idea, but out of gratitude, I felt like I needed to do it. So I did it, and it turned out pretty well. I beat the course record.
This is an amazing story. Absolutely amazing. Number one, I love Richard Rohr also.
Oh, yeah.
And the second thing, when you talked about the fact that you joined a group who then supported you, I talk about social support in resilience, in building your resilience.
Yeah.
The social support is essential. It holds you up as you're growing stronger and stronger. So that was just fabulous to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I've been learning the last couple of years, is that this idea that we're all connected, we're not isolated, that clearly from the pandemic, we learned that if someone sneezes in China, it literally has a repercussion right here.
The phrase is usually if a butterfly flutters its wings, but I love this. If someone in China sneezes.
I mean, now we know it's absolutely true how small the world is and how much we need each other.
Yeah. Oh, fabulous. Well, eventually you continue. Well, no, I shouldn't say eventually. Obviously, you just continued to do more and more and more cycling.
I did, but I wasn't successful. Okay, so I beat a course record in a local place with not very many women had done it. It wasn't like an Olympic victory. It required and then I was just invited to things, women's only training sessions over the course of many weeks, where again, dozens of people involved helping, and then started racing and was pretty much dropped at the line. I wasn't used to the speed and the strategy and the skill, and it was daunting. But I was determined. I had all those big signs. I knew I was supposed to. Knew I was on the right path.
Yeah.
For me, and I had done the soul searching. I had done the homework that you have to do internally in order to be able to handle external resistance.
Yeah.
And so but that doesn't. I'm still a human being, and I'm still a 26-year-old divorcee facing a lot of debt from a husband who was a former husband, an ex-husband who is now in jail. So I still had realities, and I didn't want to keep beating my head against the wall and not have success. So I think I was in my 7th race, and I think I prayed something like, if it doesn't go well this time, I'm done. You're going to have to come through, come to Jesus moments for real. Like, and sure enough, I was starting to get dropped. It was so fast. I was starting to come off the pace with the group, and at just the right moment, a dog ran onto the course, slowed all the leaders down. I was able to make contact, stay with them, and I finished 7th. So it was my first result. It took about 10 races. And that's that kind of scenario has characterized my entire cycling career.
Fabulous.
Where I go up another level, I can barely do it. I keep trying, I get discouraged, and then something clicks.
Yeah.
And sometimes it yields a lot of medals and big titles and beautiful jerseys. And a lot of times it's expensive and time consuming and leads to injury, and there's a lot of risk.
Yeah. Well, obviously you have a clear set of values that drives you both as a competitor, but I suspect also now as a coach. I wonder if you talk a little bit about those values. I think some of them you've already expressed, but
I think well, I value this idea of, especially as a young woman, in the first half of life, psychology tells us we are developing personality. We are learning who we are. And so one of my values is to help young women learn who they are, to take the time. From a coaching context, there are tools and metrics that I can use to help them determine who they are, their physiological profile. And each one is unique. And there are data points, and we can tweak it and look at it, and we can create a map for them.
Wow.
Where things are selected based on their unique strengths and gifts. And we're very fortunate in our discipline of athletics to have these kind of powerful tools for measuring and tracking effectiveness and discerning athletic ability and potential and athletic demand, also discerning athletic demand. So one of my values is to really drill down on the individual, their uniqueness, their unique calling, their particular mission, who they are. I believe that you develop your strengths. There has been an idea in athletics that you race or play your strengths and you train your weaknesses. I agree with that partly, but it's not the driving force. I would prefer to train somebody's strengths and develop who they really are, and then play to those strengths.
Oh, I love that emphasis, because again, from my work in resilience, it's when you know who you are that you are the strongest. So I love the fact that you're actually helping them identify those pieces and then really working to refine and hone them and strengthen them.
Yes.
Fabulous.
Thanks for bringing that up. That's interesting, about knowing who you are, and that's a lifelong process, right?
Oh, it is. It is. And I think that
Yeah.
because as we are creatures that actually do evolve. I mean, let's not use that word. We develop, we mature, and it really does make us a different person. Oh, maybe the core is the original, but still, there's just so much that life brings to you that enhances that. Yeah.
Yeah, and transformation as well as
Yes.
development, right? Change and
Great word.
Embracing change.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's sort of the first part of my strategy, and the second part is to get them thinking about. So there is a lot of self-absorption in the younger years, and a lot of required self-awareness and development of self, where you're going from becoming aware of a skill to learning a skill to mastering a skill. So I don't try to move them out of that too quickly, but I want them. So another major value of what drives me is this idea of humility, which is not a very popular notion in American culture. People fail to see the value. People see the value of humility when they don't like a proud person's talk or behavior.
Yeah.
But I think we misunderstand what humility really means. It's not this idea of being meek. It's this idea of being realistic all the time about you versus the rest of the world, you vis-a-vis the world. So if I'm flailing at the back of the pack and I finish last, my value, I have to have the humility to say that my value is the same as someone who's winning. Now, it may not be the same financial or sponsorship value, but there's still something there. It may be just value for me, my experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I'm on the podium and I'm dominant on that podium, I have to have the humility to say, look, there are people with more talent dealing drugs on the street corner who did not have my opportunities, who did not have or maybe did not have the wherewithal, or has not overcome their set of resilience requiring circumstances in order to have this opportunity. I have to have the humility to know that this is very transient. Yes, I've worked hard, but it's a very special short-term thing. And what am I going to do with it? It's not about me. It's about community. Because no one gets to the top by themselves. No one.
Oh, I really appreciate that comment that these things are ephemeral. It's a short time, and so you have to embrace that moment. But there was something else you said which really struck me, and it's managed to escape my mind, but maybe it'll come back. That happens every now and then because I get so excited about hearing what people are saying that I'm talking to. Unless I make a note, it runs out. All right, it'll come back.
Yeah, I don't even remember what I just said. So
now let me come back to some of the skills that an athlete must build. I mean, I know there are many different sports.
Oh yeah,
but are there skills that you see from your perspective that every athlete has to have?
Yeah, I think there are skills that every person has to have. So there's the skills of your actual calling, whatever that is. Leadership. There's tremendous skills, multiple types of skills in being a leader of some kind, with social interaction, understanding the dynamics of groups, learning how to discern ability and where to put that ability, how to motivate that ability. I mean, there's all kinds of, so there's skills with every job. You're a teacher, there's teaching skills. If you pick up garbage, there's skill even with that. And thank God for those people during the pandemic, the essential workers. But my point is that every job, every task has those sets of technical abilities. there are also strategic abilities. Because again, it's this idea of creating opportunities. So you have to think. I think one of the mistakes I made as a younger person was, I've done everything right. I've gotten all the A's. I've gone to a good school. I've got this and this. I deserve X, Y, Z. You need to hire me because. And I did not necessarily think strategically about how to go from strength to strength, step to step, and how much you need others for that. And I don't mean playing politics and being disingenuous and using people.
No.
I mean just making connections, because you know who you are, and you're learning who your tribe is. Who do you want to spend time with? Who's going to enrich you? And how are you going to enrich them, so that together this group, whatever it is then influencing the world and helping the world and coming up with new solutions in our world. There's lots of problems that need new solutions. So anyway, there's the skills of career, and then there's mental skills and emotional skills. And I'm not sure really the difference between those two. I mean, mental skills, so resilience, or what I would call grit. And maybe there's a difference, because I'm not a researcher in this area. Maybe there's a difference between those two, but kind of the same idea of you have to continue no matter what, because you know who you are. This is your purpose. This is your calling. There's a place for you in the world, and you need to fill it. So you're going to endure whatever it is you have to keep coming back. Certainly, there's an idea that developing the skills of balance and rest, knowing when to recover, when to pause, allowing those pauses, enjoying those pauses, taking time to reflect on what's been accomplished, even if it hasn't been successful yet. It's a process. So I think another value or another skill, well, this is a value skill, and that is this idea of process over outcome, or process with outcome. So it's a paradox. And that's another value and skill, I think, is the ability to embrace paradox. That, again, not thinking dualistically either or, but thinking and. It's important to say, I want to win this, or I want to achieve this in my work, or we have these corporate goals, but what is the process? What is your process to get to that point? Those are things that you can control. Those are things that you can make more and more efficient, and you can enjoy no matter what.
You know, Beth, I I think you've been reading my books. I love it. A couple of things. I love your comment that we have to embrace paradox. I often talk about standing in ambiguity, because people, when you've got to make a decision, the hardest ones are when you're in an ambiguous situation. You don't have all the information, and you know you don't have all the information, and yet you have to move forward. And the interesting thing is, to be an executive, that's one of the criteria. If you can't deal with ambiguity, you're hopeless. And what I'm hearing from you is, even as an athlete, something that is from an outsider's perspective so clear. You either win or you lose, but it's not. It's not.
It's funny you mentioned that. This whole win-loss conversation is dualistic thinking, and it's come up again and again for me in the last couple of weeks. And I am right there. I am the queen of thinking of winning and losing and comparison and all these things. And in fact, one of the themes that I make a little mood board for myself. It's right next to me, and it's kind of a mess. I won't show it to you, but it's full of stuff. And one of the things that was a goal for me this year was about comparison, this idea that it is a thief of joy. And comparison is based on dualistic thinking. I mean, if I'm not winning, I'm losing. If I am winning, I'm not a loser. It's just not true. The person that stands on the top step of the podium isn't morally superior to the rest of the the
Yeah.
players.
Yeah.
You know?
The, the the other thing that you said, and it's what finally I remembered, the thing that I'd lost for a while and has come back, is this aspect of, well, I worked hard, therefore I deserve. And
Yes, right.
and I think we have convinced ourselves that that's the criteria. And that's really, you are right. That is not necessarily a guarantee. And in fact, it probably isn't a guarantee, full stop. It is maybe, it is in mathematics, what we'd say, it may be essential, but it's not sufficient.
Okay.
You have to put in the work. Yes.
Yeah.
But after that, it still may not guarantee that you're going to get what you
No,
want.
there's no guarantees. I still have some dreams that are unrealized. I keep trying
Great.
for.
Me too. Me too.
Am I miserable about not achieving some of those dreams? Sometimes I am, if I'm honest. I can't cry like I did when I was 20, but I've had some internally crying moments, we'll say. And so that's why this idea of embracing the process and loving each iteration of yourself, not I'm an amateur to I'm an Olympian, but I am all these steps and shades of gray and imperfect iterations. And I don't know. Have I answered your questions?
Yeah, yes, you have. Well, it occurs to me, we've been talking about so many of this process, and we have some wonderful images of you. And I wondered, that might be a way in which you can even share a little bit more about your journey through some of the images.
Sure.
Okay, let's try one. You just tell me when to advance, and we can go through them quickly, or because you know how many we have.
This is a shot of me coaching race side. I have two junior girls who are national champions, and they've represented the United States at the world level. And this day was really a pinnacle for me up to that point, realizing that, and just I'm getting emotional. I said I didn't cry like I used to, but just getting that kudos.
Yeah.
After decades of work, you know. Yeah. So anyway, next. And this is just me race side this is a girls race. And this is just me at race side. So
great.
This is me suffering on the bike up a climb in a national level age graded race. And it went well for me that day. I dominated my category and almost won the thing overall at 59.
Wow.
But what it takes to get there, how much calorie counting and self-discipline and the hard work, but then just the beauty of I wish I would have included the picture of the celebration after with a big circle of people who helped me do that day.
Yeah. Okay.
So next. All right, this is more of the reality right here. This is what it's mostly like.
This is what we put on the poster to advertise you. I loved this image. I mean, it's dirty face and all.
Yeah, I mean, this is really kind of like the grit moment. And what's cool about this picture is that this race was such a joy for me. I had such a great day on the bike, and not necessarily felt particularly fast or had it all together. In fact, I wound up racing that day and I didn't bring my water and I hadn't had food. I mean, these are amateur mistakes. But this was after coming back from an injury, a crash that I did not cause, but I was involved in, and I had cracked ribs. And so 6 weeks later, I feel good enough to go race again. And this is my first time back. And I just, it was just a joyous day on the bike in a beautiful location. Again, with wonderful ride buddies and competitors. And yeah, I won my category, but that was not really the thing. It was the idea of, wow, this, and it was raining. It was just the idea of all this struggle, and this is why you do it, and it's still hard.
Let it be known, it is still hard.
Yeah.
This one is another one that I liked.
So last year I had a fairy tale unicorn kind of a season where I'm an expert now at who I am and what I can do well on a bike. And so my event selection and my goal selection was all to support that. So I pretty much won everything last year that I achieved. I achieved every goal except one, and that was some circumstances outside my control. So this year I decided that it was going to be better for me to learn about this comparison lesson and the process lesson if I took myself pretty far outside of my comfort zone and tried some things that scared me or involved risk. And I also needed to gain some skills that I've lost over the years, because I had some time in there where I was caring for family where I wasn't a competitor, and some of those competitive skills have been lost. So I had to go to a different discipline in my sport in order to learn those skills, because there were no other races or events where I could do it. So I tried, this is called gravel racing. It's a form of road racing that takes place on gravel roads, of which there's huge networks still in America. And actually all over the world, there's huge networks of gravel roads. And it's wonderful because there's less traffic and it's easier to promote, but it's a lot less smooth surface. You have to have particular kinds of skills. And this picture was taken at the Gravel National Championships, which was 100 miles in 40-degree pouring rain. And I, at that time, I didn't know it, but I was about a week from being hospitalized from passing a kidney stone. I didn't know that's what was going on, but I did not feel particularly good in that morning. And I had some mechanical difficulty, and I had to stand by the side of the road for about 30 minutes and just collect myself, which is really rare. So I wound up finishing the 100 miles. And one of the ways I was able to do it is while I was out there, the whole field was pretty much gone. But I ran across a friend that I hadn't seen for years, and I wound up riding the rest of it with him, and we just encouraged each other. And it was one of those epic moments that just finishing feels like winning.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But I was exhausted at the end, and I came across this finish line, and this guy is running toward me, and he's like telling me where to go, and I've been racing for 7 hours in the freezing rain, and I'm not happy. I'm what we call hangry. I'm hungry and angry. And he's like, come over here. And then he's like modeling me. I'm like, what's going on? I couldn't even think straight. And he insists on taking my picture, and he snaps it. And this stupid picture winds up making the cover of a magazine. Got the poster child for gravel racing. And it was one of the most miserable days on the bike of my life.
Well, that's a great lesson, when you're in a really, 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 really tough time, think you never know what's going to come out. There just might be a silver lining.
Yeah.
If you stay with it. Another thing that you've been talking about is this aspect of pushing yourself. You use different language than the edge, but that aspect of, and I've read this about athletics, that you have to push to the edge, but not so far that you will fail, but just enough that you're testing and stretching yourself. And
Yes.
I think that also applies in I'll call it business. I know that
Absolutely.
when I work with staff, very often I will think to myself, okay, what is it that they do well? And what is it that I think they can do if I just give them a little stretch? And years ago, I wrote an article called Tracked Autonomy, which is where you do exactly that. And it's amazing how just allowing them to stretch enough that they feel some pain, but not to the point of failure, they grow enormously in those processes.
That's interesting. So there's a famous coach in endurance sport, cycling in particular, and his motto was "Train, don't strain." It's kind of the same philosophy. And also, I try to do this with my girls, my young girls, and myself, and that is, I think it's important to give yourself moments of cushiness and robustness and abundance where you shore up your soul and your psychological motivation and your body with hearty successful experiences. But then I also try to give a smattering of risk taking, to the edge type of epic situations that are kind of like in weightlifting, like the 1 max rep. Is you're trying to find out what is the max rep I can push, so you know how to train multiple sets to get stronger. And that's what I call these experiences. This is like a 1 max rep. I'm not going to do this regular. It's not going to be my regular diet, but I'm going to throw it in once in a while. I need to be uncomfortable. And then training also is about having a rhythm of rest, robustness, refreshment, but also mostly being modestly or moderately challenged. You cannot, there's a principle of overreach, rest, adapt, and you cannot overreach without being moderately uncomfortable. So it's degrees of discomfort, and making sure that you can consistently be moderately uncomfortable and then resting in order to gain an adaptation or
it's interesting because when I was studying under Bo Eason, whom I mentioned at the beginning, one of the things that he always said was, you've got to rehearse, perform, rest. He said, don't ever forget the rest piece. And he's absolutely correct. Your whole self. If you throw yourself into your performance, which certainly athletes often do, your whole body, everything needs to be just to be able to take a breath. Yeah, lovely.
Yeah, but it's only characterized though by this idea of moderately challenging yourself daily. And then one other way to look at it, because for goal performances, the mindset needs to be a little different than 1 max rep. Your training should have prepared you that the goal event is beyond moderate challenge, but not what I would call epic. And at those moments, you do what I like to call leaving your guts on the road. And you have to lay it all out there. And interestingly, the body and the mind cannot do that very often. So you have to pick your moments.
Yeah, it's true. As a coach, how do you translate what you know to your developing athletes? And I'm going to take this image off, if you don't mind.
Yes, go ahead.
I love it though.
Well, I think first is by example. And even if I weren't competing, of course, it's easy for me to model certain things being a competitor. And sometimes there's a little bit of tension with that. Sometimes I've been in events with my athletes. I try to limit that because I don't want that competitiveness among us. or that kind of tension or pressure on them, or myself either, actually. But even if I weren't a competitor, they're able to see my struggles in my events, which are different than theirs. They know what my training is. Maybe not, they don't see my training plan, but they see the outcomes of that in social media. There's several forums for that. And they know that I'm putting in the work. They know that I am not going to ask them something that I have not myself suffered through. So there's really that example. And then the other way is teaching. So I'm clearly very direct. I try not to leave. There's times when mystery is not a good thing. So I'm very direct. I just tell them.
Mm-hmm.
And there's other times when I prompt them and I poke them a little, to embrace ambiguity, uncertainty, lack of formula, think for themselves, learn how to see, learn how to really see. Be cold, hard, objective in self-evaluating performances. And then finally, I think one of the biggest things that I do is, and I'm not very good at it, and I'm trying to get better, is listen.
Yeah.
Just let them vent. Because obviously, look, I'm working with people who have or are answering the who am I question. And the who are they question has to do with my profession. So who better to vent to than me? That's one of my responsibilities, and I need to listen. I need to and that often in the venting, we figure things out ourselves, right?
Yeah. It's under the pressure. It's true. Well, I was thinking as you were talking, I was thinking about how I interact with my students. And I love the fact that you say you just are direct about what they need to hear. I felt the same way, and explained to my students that, if they question something, or they need to just simply say what it is, and that we would have a very open conversation. And it works. It takes a little while before they really believe it. But after a while, when you demonstrate that there's no judgment in your questions or comments, it's just, this is how it is.
Yes, exactly. The judgment piece is key.
Yeah. And suddenly their emotions leave as well, and they're able to perform so much better.
Sometimes I like them to feel like, sometimes they need to feel like I'm an authority and I'm holding them accountable. Mm-hmm. But sometimes they need to feel like I'm a peer on their team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And there's a place for both. It's not duality again, right?
You're absolutely right. And I like the way you said that, because that's exactly the issue you have when you're working as a faculty member with a student, because they want to hold you up here. And yet what you want to do is bring them up right so that you are at a peer level, because that's why they're studying. So you want to give them, I want to give them glimpses of that so that they know they can make it.
I have read some business leadership books like Good to Great and those kind of studies. Some, not a lot. It's not my profession, but there's some really good lessons for athletics in there. And I know I don't know much about this idea of business management, but I know enough to know that there are different styles, and that there's kind of an old school authoritative, and then there's this newer idea of embracing the group. And what saddens me about that is that there are times when I want to be told what to do. I don't, by an expert. Tell me what to do. I don't want my doctor to say, let's sit around in a group focus and contemplate your treatment. Like, just tell me, And I think there are also times when it would be nice if the doctor, like I remember when as a child, the doctor sitting and listening to you and looking you in the eye, not typing at a computer and then saying next, like having this newer business philosophy of everyone's around a circle. One of my favorite images, everyone around a circle, kumbaya or not, managed conflict, trying to come up with solutions.
But essential to what you were saying is that there is an acknowledgement that you exist. The doctor is up there looking at you,
Yeah.
And listening to you. And I think even today, although you want the doctor to be clear about what the prognosis is and what the solution is, or the treatment, you also want to be assured that the doctor has heard everything you need to tell them.
Yes, right.
So that translates definitely into management. You have to be willing to listen, to hear what the situation is. Then you may have to go in and say, no, this is how we're going to do it. But the staff, the employee needs to know they have their position, their perspective has been listened to. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
mirroring, right?
That's part of mirroring. Yes. Mirroring is reflective of that. I'm reflective of that. How about that for fun? Goodness. Oh, all right. Now, I want to make sure we can get some lessons directly to our audience, because in my audience, I have people who are just starting out. I have people who are maybe at a pivot point in their life. I think there's just so much that you have brought to the table that I think would be things that, even though you're saying it from an athletic perspective, that they can apply it themselves. I wonder if you would comment on those.
I really think that this idea of really knowing who you are, there's wonderful tools of psychology, Myers-Briggs and the Enneagram, and other tools like that. Really knowing who you are. There's tests you can take for skills in most professions, and doing that necessary internal work that sometimes comes down to actual retreats or sabbaticals, or taking a lesser job so you can ponder for a while, or staying in the same jobs until you figure it out. But doing that internal work, that's hard. It's not easy. And then from there, discovering what your strengths are, mastering those strengths, building them to their greatest potential, enlisting help to help you do that, and then having the mental and emotional fortitude that even though you know who you are, you know you're gifted for a particular area, and you know what that path is, it's still going to be incredibly difficult at times. And so having that determination, understanding that enjoyment of process during all that stuff, and learning how to celebrate and embrace all the hard stuff.
I love that last word, celebrate. And I can't believe that we are almost out of time. This has been such a marvelous conversation. And you have,
thank you, Madelyn.
You are so welcome.
I've enjoyed it too. And
good.
Good. Learned from you.
Yeah. Well, again, there are some things I wrote down, push to the edge, train, don't strain. I got to look more into this one max rep. And your comments about knowing who you are. That's one of the first things I talk about in my book on resilience. You have to begin, and I do it through story, telling your own personal stories to yourself so that you understand what actually formed you. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I'm just thrilled that I finally had a really deep conversation with a master athlete. I usually talk about resilience of things that are unexpected, but also the examples of caring for someone who with an illness that requires that every day. You have to make the decision to continue doing so. That's resilience also. And sport has this kind of resilience built into it. Every day, you'll be testing your ability to move on farther and farther. I'm honored to have learned more about this skill, which athletes must embrace in order to achieve. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Unlocked. And if you have, make a comment in social media about what you learned and might do differently as a result. And if you're on YouTube or LinkedIn, click the like button. Better yet, subscribe and follow me. And please check out my book, Unlocked, for practices that actually work. Now, as you may know, I mentor individuals. I've done so for years. If you're interested, send me an email to madelyn@madelynblair.com. I will respond directly. And if you would like to join a group mentoring session, again, write me and I will inform you when the next group session is scheduled. If you have questions about the show or for the show, again, email them to me, madelyn@madelynblair.com. And of course, replays of the show are found on my website, madelynblair.com/unlockedtv, and just scroll down and you can see them all. So thank you for joining us on this segment of Unlocked. I'm Madelyn Blair, wishing you infinite possibilities as you unlock your resilience.